I know that Paul Allen wants to win, and he doesn't want to just win once in a while. He wants to win from now on.
Your Seahawks, Super Bowl 48 champions.
The Seattle Seahawks are now the surest thing and the most unbeatable team in all of sports.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
By the offseason of 2014, the NFL world had accepted that what was going on in Seattle was special. They didn't lose any critical pieces, and considering how young their core players were, Seattle was in the best possible situation, and they entered the regular season with the best Super Bowl odds in the NFL. Their impact on the defensive side of the ball was so widely recognized that their most vocal player, Richard Sherman, graced the cover of Madden going into the 2014 season. In the history of the Madden cover athlete, a defensive player had only been featured twice outside of Richard Sherman. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend checking that out, as it goes into a ton of depth about the rise of the Seattle Seahawks to this point. It's also the longest and most detailed video in the history of this channel, so I'm not going to repeat too much of what I've already covered, but I do want to lay out just how special this roster really was by 2014. I'll also mention some more details I didn't point out in part 1. Hey guys, before we continue, this video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, for all you athletes out there, whether you're still competing or are done competing, this is something we all go through: post-athlete depression. For me, sports was my life. It brought me some of my greatest memories from my childhood. But when my sports career ended, I didn't know how to deal with myself. I no longer had an outlet to express myself like I did throughout my childhood, which led me to years of feeling lost and having no purpose. Luckily, this YouTube channel gave me some sense of purpose, but it still didn't replace the joy and camaraderie of playing sports. Of course, I didn't understand any of this at the time, let alone how to deal with myself emotionally. It really wasn't until I went to therapy where I started to really understand what I was going through and how to cope with it. Today, I have a much healthier outlook on life, which I'm extremely grateful for. If you are currently struggling and wish to seek help, let me introduce you to BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you gotta go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/KTO. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer, via phone call, voice chat, or messaging, however you feel most comfortable. It's the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so it happens fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can help you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/KTO or choose KTO during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
And Kaepernick wide open.
The backbone of this team was the defense. When Pete Carroll was hired in 2010, he brought with him from USC a young grad assistant and one of his former players, Chris Richard. Richard had worked with DBs while at Southern Cal, something he would continue to do in Seattle. Also, Carroll decided to keep 2009 Seahawks defensive coordinator Gus Bradley and defensive line coach Dan Quinn. These three coaches, alongside Carroll, would become pivotal in building the Legion of Boom. The defenses they ran were fairly simple, mostly consisting of cover 1 and cover 3. Their defensive philosophy relied on the athleticism and talent of the members of the secondary. Also, Chris Richard, who spent the most time with the defensive backs, taught them to play aggressive, but to keep their hits within the legal area in order to limit penalties for blows to the head. During practice, the receivers would run routes with shields strapped to their chests that ran from neck to mid-thigh. It's also important to note that schemes and philosophy don't mean jack if you don't have the right players, which leads to perhaps the most impressive aspect of the entire Seahawks rise: their ability to find late round picks who completely outperformed their draft positions. Pete Carroll, who was a DB himself back in his day, studied taller cornerback tandems like Mike Haynes and Lester Hayes when assembling the core of defensive backs. Cornerback Richard Sherman, cornerback Brandon Browner, and strong safety Cam Chancellor are much taller and in the case of Chancellor and Browner, much bigger than the average player at their positions. Over the span of 4 seasons, this defense went from 25th to 1st in points allowed. On the other side of the ball, the offense's success was greatly increased once they acquired Russell Wilson. Beast Mode had pretty much carried this offense on his back until 2012. Then Wilson entered the picture, and the offense's performance improved dramatically. The composure, ball security, and huge plays when it mattered most quickly proved all Wilson's naysayers wrong. With Wilson still on a rookie contract following their Super Bowl victory, this allowed Seattle to retain nearly every piece that made their roster so special. It's no wonder people felt like Seattle could repeat. In many ways, they had struck gold. The only thing that hadn't worked to that point was the Percy Harvin trade. Harvin had well-documented off-the-field issues and barely played throughout the season. They ended up trading him early on in 2014. Things didn't get off to a great start in 2014. However, they flipped a switch mid-season. After a lackluster 6-4 start, Seattle turned up the dial defensively, going on their most dominant 6-game stretch of the Legion of Boom era.
Seattle, but it's still loose. Look at the play by Helfet.
They gave up just 6.5 points per game.
And it's intercepted at the 50-yard line by Richard Sherman. And everybody in this area knows him.
Teams averaged 22.6 points per game in 2014. To pull this off in an era where offenses can do so much more than they used to, it's not only impressive, it might be the greatest 6-game run by any defense in modern NFL history. They forced 10 turnovers and only gave up 3 touchdowns, and 5 of the 6 opponents had a record of 500 or better, 3 of which made the playoffs. Once again, Seattle would finish number 1 in scoring defense for the 3rd straight year.
Bruce Irvin, touchdown Seahawks.
And while the defense turned up the dial, Marshawn Lynch was still breaking off runs like this.
Makes a man miss, cuts back outside right 30, 35, 40, down the far sidelines, pushes the defender, keeps fighting, he's still moving, he's gonna go. Are you kidding me?
What a run! Oh my
Seahawks! Holy catfish!
In an era where the pass game had exploded, Seattle was dead last in the NFL in pass attempts and finished with the best run game in the NFL. Russell Wilson wasn't asked to do too much with his arm, but when he did throw it, he rarely made mistakes, and his mobility was a huge issue for opposing defenses. Wilson and Lynch combined for over 2,100 rushing yards throughout the regular season. What was really magical about Wilson's game was how he could be the perfect game manager, limiting turnovers. Then he could effectively run the option and bust off game-breaking runs like this, and then finally would pull out some backyard football madness in a pinch. Pete Carroll and this front office had not only proved that they could rebuild a franchise, they were becoming the standard of the 2010s. And now it was time to go get their 2nd Super Bowl in a row. In the divisional round, things went as expected, and Seattle cruised to a 14-point victory over Carolina. However, this was not the case the following week when they hosted Green Bay. After an atrocious first half with 4 turnovers, Seattle trailed 16-0 at halftime. Midway through the 3rd quarter, finally, Seattle had put together a drive to at least keep things interesting. However, they stalled out in the red zone and were forced to attempt a field goal.
And they're gonna fake it. Ryan gonna float it for the touchdown!
All of a sudden, one trick play breathed life back into the 12th man. It was game on, but this momentum quickly ran out. The Packers would convert on a field goal late in the 3rd, while Seattle's next 3 drives ended in 0 points. After Russell Wilson threw an interception on the first play of a drive with 5 minutes to go, you could feel the life sucked out of the stadium. It was one last gut punch to every last Seahawks supporter. Russell Wilson had by far his worst game as a pro, and it wasn't even close. The Packers had a 2-score lead. They also had the ball, and the clock was running. Even if Seattle got the ball back, their offense outside of one trick play had produced 0 points. The fat lady had not only warmed up her vocal cords, she was halfway through her 2nd verse. But it turns out her singing wasn't to signify that the game was over, but rather to add emphasis to a truly dramatic finish that was about to take place.
They're going to have to create some big plays, come away with a touchdown quickly to still have time to have a chance to win. That's Lynch. Pass is caught. Wilson keeping it for the touchdown. But the Seahawks have life. Kick up into the air.
What are you thinking right now?
God is too good all the time, man. Every time. These guys on this team are unbelievable, man.
After maybe the most miraculous last-minute comeback any of us have ever witnessed in the playoffs, Seattle was still alive and was headed to their second Super Bowl in a row. They survived Russell Wilson's worst 3.5 quarters of his career with a fake field goal touchdown, an onside kick, and what appeared to be magic.
So once he gets settled into the podium, we will listen in live here on NFL Network with Beast Mode.
Do my time start? Oh, it started? Well, then let me start. Hey, I'm just here so I don't get fined. So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to. I'm going to answer with the same answer, so y'all can shoot if y'all please. I'm here so I won't get fined. I'm here so I won't get fined. I'm here so I won't get fined. Hey, you better make more with your time. You only got 3 more minutes. I'm just here so I won't get fined. You know why I'm here. 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 You know why I'm here.
By the time Super Bowl 49 arrived, the relationship between Marshawn Lynch and the media had become a nationwide spectacle. The buildup had been happening for years. In 2013, he began refusing to talk to the media, and in 2014, he started giving responses like this.
Yeah.
How does that defense compare to others that you've seen this year?
Yeah.
You talked to
Thanks for asking.
What's that?
I said thanks for asking.
Marshawn, can you describe the 79-yard touchdown run?
Thanks for asking.
How about the stomach issue early in the game?
I appreciate you asking about my stomach. Thank you. Y'all want to try again, huh? I'm thankful. I'm thankful. I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Thank you.
This is how Marshawn himself described why things got to this point.
And then I started seeing the same people that was interviewing me after the games. Oh, you did great, blase, blase, you know, woo, woo. And then when I started hitting these troubles, it was the same people like, oh, I knew he wasn't this, and oh, he's just a criminal and a thug, all from Oakland.
This had become such a spectacle that Skittles used it as an opportunity to advertise.
You don't feel in beast mode. It feels you.
But beyond the interviews, there was still a game to be played. The Seahawks were to face off versus the Patriots, who had absolutely crushed the Colts in the AFC title game. The matchup was intriguing. The Seahawks were attempting to become the first back-to-back champions since who else? The Patriots pulled it off about a decade prior. Both teams were stacked, and the Vegas line was a straight pick'em, which just went to show how evenly matched these two juggernauts were. If Seattle was going to win this game, surely they couldn't start the way they did in the NFC title match. The end of that game was something out of a sports movie. Some say you need to sell your soul to the devil to receive that kind of fortune. Well, during Super Bowl 49, the Seahawks' performance through most of 3 quarters was anything but luck. With possession of the ball late in the third, Seattle had a 10-point lead and control of the game after scoring 17 unanswered. And if Kearse catches this pass, it sets up Seattle in the red zone with a chance to take a commanding 3-score lead. But he couldn't reel it in. If Seattle really did sell their soul to the devil, then at some point they have to pay up, because the devil always gets his due. And in the football world, if the devil exists, it may just be Tom Brady. Over the course of the final 11 minutes, Seattle would have a front row seat to the sobering reality of what so many before them had to fall victim to. When it mattered most, this cold-blooded killer lined up across from you and was going to have his way. It's the death of 1,000 paper cuts, the decision-making and precision accuracy of some advanced AI designed to play quarterback, the methodical dink and dunk that slowly rips your heart out. Seattle, with their all-time great pass defense, watched their 10-point lead disappear, and they found themselves trailing with 2 minutes to go. But unlike the countless victims before them, Seattle pulled off another miracle.
Russell for Kearse.
Oh, did he wind up with a football? Unbelievable.
Just like that, with a minute left in the Super Bowl, Seattle was about to escape. Back-to-back Super Bowls was no longer a dream. It was damn near a certainty, considering the circumstance they had in front of them. The Seahawks set themselves up with 4 chances to take the lead from the 5-yard line. With the #1 rush attack in the NFL, and arguably the top short yardage back in the game, there was little doubt about what Seattle was going to do in this situation. Perhaps Tom Brady really isn't the devil.
Beast mode to the half-yard line.
Maybe, more often than not, the real issue lies within ourselves. We can't control most of what's happening around us.
Do you let him score?
Yep.
Do you put the ball back in the hands of Tom Brady?
41, 40. Give it to him again. Give it to him again.
Perhaps then the only choice we have is how we react.
Baldwin sets up on the left.
Unfortunately, we can be our own worst enemy.
When we got down there, I said, let's make sure that we have a chance to get all 4 shots. One of these plays, we're going to have to throw it. Bill sends in the goal line team. That went through the play callers.
They're going goal line. They're going goal line.
That's what led them to throw it on that down.
The thing is, 9 times out of 10, if you give me the ball in that situation, we coming away with something.
Lynch in the backfield. Russell looks. Throws inside. Oh my God! It's picked off at the goal line. Intended for Lockett at the goal line. Oh my word! Oh my word!
The single most dramatic, shocking, heartbreaking, jaw-dropping loss in the history of the NFL. And it all came from the most perplexing decision that is still talked about to this day. In poetic fashion, Seattle, a team built on late-round picks and undrafted free agents, had their devastating last-second defeat come at the hands of Malcolm Butler, an undrafted rookie who was only in the game because starting corner Kyle Arrington had played a poor first half. And to add to that, the other corner on that side had jammed Kearse enough to give room for Butler to slide in and make that play. That player was none other than Brandon Browner, a key member of the Legion of Boom until 2014. Browner, who had helped build the legendary defense in Seattle, had now played a role to prevent his former team from repeating as champions.
That was the worst play call in Super Bowl history.
I didn't know at the time, but I also thought it eroded our locker room down the road. So really the dynasty kind of ended on that play. Or I shouldn't say dynasty, what could have been a dynasty. The locker room It was probably the worst atmosphere I've ever been in, outside of sports, outside of anything. It just was like such a hard pill to swallow.
It's like a dark cloud hovering over us. And the love that we had with one another, we looked at each other like, it was like every man's for themselves.
Yeah.
I don't trust you, I don't like you. What you did to my legacy is ruined because of this decision.
It's very difficult to maintain a high level of cohesion year after year. Guys age, dudes get paid, making it harder to keep good players. Members of the coaching staff and front office go elsewhere. Injuries happen. The list goes on. Now, to imagine the idea that one play possibly prevented a dynasty is absolutely wild. From multiple players on that team, you can hear the mental effect this moment had on them.
I think guys started kind of questioning him a little more so than actually following his lead if we would have won that Super Bowl.
Leadership is such a critical piece to success on any team. The more members of that team, the more important it is for leadership to be great. And in this instance, if every time coach speaks, players have a shred of doubt because of something that happened previously, it's going to have some sort of negative effect. Maybe just enough to lose a few close games they should have won. Now, the other side to the difficulty of maintaining cohesion is when the front office decides to take the team in a different direction philosophically.
We've heard some surprising news. The New Orleans Saints, 1 year removed from signing Jimmy Graham to a 4-year, $40 million deal with $21 million guaranteed, have decided to part ways with their all-pro tight end, trading him to the Seattle Seahawks for Max Unger and a first-round draft choice.
Jimmy Graham was a total freak. He would be a great addition to any team, but the cost to acquire him left some puzzled.
We're gonna go and trade our team captain, an offensive lineman, on a run-first team for a receiving tight end? I played tight end. We don't even fucking throw a ball at tight ends. We never have. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey Jimmy, you're gonna put your hand in the dirt and block for Marshawn. So I'm like, what the?
What are we doing?
What are we doing?
The rest of the 2015 offseason further confirmed the new direction Seattle was headed. On July 31st, the Seahawks and Wilson agreed to a contract that made him the second highest paid player in the NFL. But ultimately, they would have to cut costs elsewhere. In the same offseason, Cam Chancellor, who felt underpaid, decided to hold out, seeking a new deal. They had already let one original member of the Legion of Boom go, and it was becoming clear that it wasn't going to be easy to retain every piece that made this team so dominant. Chancellor's holdout carried 2 games into the regular season, which both ended in losses for Seattle. Chancellor, being a guy who couldn't handle seeing his team lose, ended the holdout without a new deal. In just his second game back, Chancellor would remind everyone of his impact.
Stafford throwing middle, there's Johnson.
But an even more impactful play was later in that game, when Chancellor made one of the greatest defensive plays ever.
Stafford complete. Calvin Johnson to the end zone, fumbles it, and it goes out of bounds. It'll be a touchback if he didn't break the play.
It is a touchback. Seattle's ball, first down.
And it's going to be that.
At this point, outside of all frustrations within the locker room, one thing was clear. This team was still loaded with talent, and they had the pieces to get back to the promised land. 2015 had a similar feel to 2014. After a mediocre 4-5 start, the defending NFC champs rose from the ashes to go on another late season run. Russell Wilson went from a disaster artist to Houdini over the late stretch.
2nd and 6. Open, it's Baldwin, and he's got the touchdown.
With performances that some called MVP worthy. He routinely pulled off some backyard, draw it up in the dirt madness that resulted in a big play time and time again.
And that move gets him a first down.
And a lot of this was done without Marshawn Lynch, as he was sidelined with an injury. Meanwhile, the defense locked down most of their opponents on their way to a 4th straight season with the least amount of points given up in the NFL. This had never happened in the history of the league, and it's a perfect indicator of just how consistently dominant
Here's one pick. That was easy, Earl Thomas.
And special this side of the ball was. To end the 2015 regular season, Seattle went 6-1 down the stretch, blowing out 4 of their last 5 opponents.
for late in the season. We got our legs, we're ready to go, and we're cranked up about it.
However, in the postseason, because they finished 10-6, which was their worst record in 4 seasons, Seattle was subject to a road playoff schedule instead of playing at home. The 12th man had been one of their biggest weapons over the years, and now they didn't have it. In the third coldest game ever played, a contest that can be best described as ugly, had resulted in a 1-point lead for Seattle. Their fate rested on the right foot of Blair Walsh, who was kicking a field goal from 27 yards out. This is a 97%er, but luckily for Seattle, Minnesota is much more cursed than they are.
Snap good, spot down, Walsh's kick is up, and it is no good, he missed it!
One common trend to that point in the Pete Carroll era was Seattle's agonizingly slow starts in the postseason, only to somehow come back late in the game. This would continue the following week against Carolina. The previous playoffs, when Seattle hosted Carolina, they handled their business. However, on the road this time around, they were punched in the mouth. Falling behind 31-0 to Carolina, it was the largest playoff deficit this team had faced throughout this era. Amazingly, just like their 2012 performance versus Atlanta and the 2014 NFC Championship versus Green Bay, Seattle clawed their way back to a 1-score deficit with 1 minute remaining.
This one is caught for the touchdown!
Only this time around, they failed to convert the onside kick. What really had hurt Seattle by the end of 2015 was 2 main things. Number 1, after trading their Pro Bowl center Max Unger, their attempt to patch up this average at best O-line did not work. They were one of the worst units in the game. And number 2, injuries caught up with them. Jimmy Graham was on injured reserve after game number 9, so they didn't even reap the benefits of that trade in year 1. For the other critical injuries, this team not only lost Marshawn Lynch, but Thomas Rawls as well. In Lynch's place, Rawls was averaging 5.6 yards per carry, an insanely high number. In fact, it was the best in the NFL. It was too bad that he got injured. Now Lynch did try and come back versus Carolina, but was completely ineffective. And overall, this poor offensive line, combined with the injuries, made this unit lifeless in the playoffs. On the day of Super Bowl 50, it marked the first time in 3 years that another team was representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. It was also a painful reminder to the Seattle faithful that greatness doesn't last forever, as Marshawn Lynch announced his retirement that day via Twitter.
You good never playing another down?
I'm done. I'm not playing football anymore.
Instead of playing in the big game, the Seahawks were going to be moving forward without their workhorse that had carried their offense since the 2010 playoffs. But this is the NFL. Players don't last forever. If you're going to be great over the long stretch, you have to be able to replace talent. Unfortunately for Seattle, after insane success finding talent from 2010 through 2012, their luck ran out when it came to the draft, acquiring significantly less impactful players from 2013 to 2015. Some of their most successful draft picks during this time had more success elsewhere. Entering 2016, their attempt to replace Marshawn Lynch was led by Christine Michael and Thomas Rawls. Rawls had major success in 2015, but was nowhere near that level in 2016, largely due to injuries. These two backs combined for less than 900 yards and just 3.6 yards per carry, behind what was considered the worst offensive line in the league. This offensive line issue was so bad, you could make the argument that it was the main reason why this team began falling apart. Rather quickly, Seattle's offense went from a bruising, smash-mouth machine to a shell of its former self. They had become primarily reliant on the right arm and the legs of Russell Wilson. Now, without the aid of a solid run game, the offense was no longer humming, as they finished 2016 below average in scoring, which can be best highlighted in the most ugly yet memorable regular season game of the 2016 season. After finishing up regulation tied at a whopping 6 total points combined, the Cardinals and Seahawks displayed truly inept football on the biggest stage, Sunday Night Football.
Contact with him.
24-yard attempt. Oh, he hits the upright. It's no good.
in the world?
After the Cardinals missed a 94%er, the Seahawks went down and missed a 95%er.
John Ryan to hold. And he misses it. That's impossible.
Oh my God.
That is impossible.
Besides the crumbling of the Seahawks offense, the Legion of Boom was showing signs of slowing down. Their 4-year reign of leading the league in points allowed came to an end, as they finished 3rd in 2016. And late in the season, a brutal injury to Earl Thomas ended his year early. This led him to openly weighing the idea of retirement. Seattle did manage to cruise to a wildcard victory over Detroit, but were clearly outmatched when they played Atlanta. The magic seemed to be running out. The story that was once filled with so much potential, so much hope, was approaching its final chapters. Dusk was on the horizon, but instead of these brothers riding off into the sunset, cherishing the memories they created, an unsettling epilogue was about to begin.
Here you are, you know you're facing a season ender, and you're still out there for your guy.
Because that's the reason why I was playing in the first place. You know, just gotta stay positive. That's all you can do.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Cam Chancellor suffered a neck injury last Thursday night against Arizona, and it has not looked good all week.
Blair Walsh to try and put the Seahawks ahead from 48. The kick is not good.
Yeah, before he even got to the player. And he has Earl Thomas, who wasn't happy with his contract.
This moment marked the official end of the Legion of Boom.
You gave him the dirty bird. He said nothing.
No, we haven't spoken.
Do you regret giving Pete Carroll the dirty bird?
I don't regret my decision. If my teammates felt like it was towards them, I regret that part. But I don't regret doing it to Pete.
I absolutely have a problem with it, Skip. I understand you're frustrated, and it's rightfully so. The only problem that I have with Earl, you got to make a decision. I'm going to put the pressure on the Seattle Seahawks. Either you're going to move me, or you're going to give me a contract extension because I'm not coming in. That's what he should have done, but he feared this into existence.
Earl Thomas caught an extremely tough break. A player still at the top of his game was hoping to get paid for it, but instead suffered another season-ending injury. He would never play another snap for the Seahawks, joining Cam Chancellor, who had retired from a neck injury, and Richard Sherman, who had joined the 49ers. The defense still had excellent pieces like Bobby Wagner, but most of the surrounding cast was new, young faces.
If we were going to define each part of the Pete Carroll Seattle years into 3 eras, to this point, they would be described as the following: the building blocks, the Legion of Boom, and let Russ cook. This era was defined by Wilson putting up insane numbers, while most of the guys around him performed average to mediocre. They made the playoffs a few times during this era, but never did much of anything once they got there. With so many new pieces, the culture in the locker room had completely shifted, and it wasn't for the better.
I stroll into that practice. This is the part I never told me. That was the worst practice I've ever seen. We were dropping balls, laughing about it. False starts left and right, laughing about it. Dude, I went home that night and I'm like, this team sucks. This team sucks. This team is terrible. If we would have had a practice like that in 2013, 2014, or 2015, I'll even throw in 2016 in that, we would have had a players-only meeting where everybody was like, enough of this. Like, what the hell did we just do?
Nothing lasts forever. Ultimately, the Seattle Seahawks had their rise and fall. That's where the story should have ended. But unexpected drama surrounding the face of the franchise took center stage. Russell Wilson's reputation to the outside world was highly respected throughout the 2010s. He had been extremely successful on the field and was a solid guy off the field. But after years of tension between the front office and Wilson's camp, things reached a breaking point. The team suffered their first losing season with Wilson in 2021, and in the offseason of 2022, he was traded to Denver. Throughout 2022, everyone seemingly turned on Russ. As his play dipped on the field, so did his reputation.
We're learning a lot more now, I think, about Russ than we ever have in the past, and I don't know if it's all good. How long can Russ just maintain this super positive, always good guy outlook?
Everyone thinks he's fake, and I don't think people like fake.
How do you feel about Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman alluding to the fact that they were never able to get a hold of Russell Wilson? They had to go through his team to get a hold of him.
That's tough. That's tough.
I think so, too.
That's tough.
Wilson's response to Lynch was pretty telling.
Heard from Marshawn.
Yeah, I didn't get to hear what Marshawn said, but somebody told me earlier that he said some good things, and Marshawn, man, he's a guy that I can always. He's always been amazing. You know, how he's gone about things, and
he admitted that he heard from someone else what Lynch said, and basically went on to say nothing of the situation. So here's what we know. Number one, Russ threw that interception on the goal line, which absolutely divided the locker room. Number two, Russ got paid a huge contract the following offseason. And number three, certain defensive players did not respect him.
One of the last preseason games that I was there, the floor was opened up by Pete at the Friday night meeting. The game was Saturday. A couple of the guys got up and spoke, and then Russell got up to speak. And I was sitting in the back where the defensive lineman was. That was the group where I was doing my internship. So as soon as Russell Wilson got up to speak, almost to a man, that entire defense that we think of and we know of rolled their eyes and sat back and were like, oh my goodness, here's this new kid.
Would things have been different if Wilson never threw that interception? It's certainly possible. The truth was, even after 2017, when the Legion of Boom was gone, Seattle was pretty damn good as a football team, reaching the playoffs 4 times over that next 5 years. However, they failed to reach another conference title game after 2014. I'll finish with this. It's extremely hard to win in the NFL, but when you are as good as Seattle was from 2013 to 2016, it's a painful pill to swallow as a fan knowing what could have been. At minimum, back-to-back Super Bowls would have been legendary.